yesterday we went over two main topics. Right? What were the two main subjects we talked about yesterday? Dan, what's one?
Air masses.
Air masses and Jordan?
Fronts.
The fronts. And fronts are just when two air masses interact. Okay, so we kind of went over them in general yesterday. Today we're going to focus on the air masses. So we could name the air masses based off of where they come from. Okay, not where they're going. Where did they form over? Did they form over land? Did they form over water? Did they form up north? Did they form down south? What did they do to become that way? Okay, so we wrote this down yesterday, right?
Yes.
Land. So Austin, since you weren't here yesterday, you can write this down. Stuff up here. If the air forms over land, it's going to be dry, right? Makes sense. There's not much water over land. So we call that continental air masses. This is something you can add in there. We're going to give abbreviations so you don't have to say continental all the time. We're going to abbreviate it with a lowercase c. Continental is abbreviated with a lowercase c. But it means it's going to be dry weather. We're not going to have any chance of rain ever. If it forms over water, remember that's moist air or lots of water vapor in there. There's higher chances for rain. And we call that maritime. That's the one word we're not used to. If you guys were, I don't know, a shrimp and boat captain, you might hear the word maritime more often. But since we live here in Illinois, we don't get to hear it. But it means water, basically. We use a lowercase m for maritime. The air forms over the water. Yeah?
Does it matter if the letters uppercase or lowercase?
For our sakes, not really. But the rule of thumb is that these guys are lowercase. Okay? If it's warm air, okay, because we base it not only on whether it forms over land or water, but if it's warm or cold. So if it's warm air, remember we talked about that being less dense, and we call that tropical. Tropical air is warm, hot sometimes. That one comes from the south. We're in the U.S., it comes from the south. We abbreviate that with a capital T. Where cold air comes from the north, right? From the North Pole. And we call that polar and use a capital P. So it's easy to remember the abbreviations. It's just the first letter of the words. So instead of saying continental polar, we can say CP. Or maritime tropical, we can say MT. There is one that we didn't talk about yesterday. And that's because I don't like to acknowledge that it even exists. Right? You know me and my feelings on winter, right?
Yes. Same here.
Yeah. I hate winter. So it's bad enough to get polar air masses that bring cold air to us. Remember the polar vortexes? 4 days off of school for us. Freezing cold. The reason they canceled school is because it was too cold for kids to go outside and wait for the bus. It was too dangerous for that. Okay? It was negative 30 degrees. That's ridiculous. That's more than just a polar air mass. That's what we call an Arctic air mass. Okay, so you might run into this on a worksheet or two. I'm not going to put it on the test that we have next Friday on weather already. Okay. I'm not going to put Arctic on there, but you are going to see it. Okay, it's freezing air. It comes from like Siberia in Russia. When that comes through, that's just not good. All right, so continental, maritime, tropical, polar, and then Arctic. So what we need to do is be able to see where an air mass forms and name it. Or if I tell you the weather that comes with the air mass, you'll have to be able to name the air mass that's causing it. Or if I give you an air mass, you have to tell me the weather or the area that it comes from. Okay? It goes forwards and backwards. So a question could be, let's see. We're getting affected by an air mass that formed over Canada. What type of air mass is that? So if it formed over Canada and it came down to Crystal Lake, what kind of air mass would that be? What would we call that air mass? Formed over Canada. That's all I'm telling you. I want everyone to think about it. I see a couple people kind of just spacing out right now. If it forms over Canada, what kind of air mass would that be? Trevor, what do you think? Okay, continental. But that's only half the equation, right? What's the second part of it? Continental. Chris? Polar. Why do you say polar? Because it's cold up there. It comes from the north. Look, I put north by cold air. Right? So if you don't have that, you probably want to put that down too. If it comes from the north, it's going to be polar. It's going to be colder. It doesn't have to be freezing cold. This is going to be colder air than here. Alright? Trevor, why did you say continental?
Because it formed over land.
Yeah, Canada is a country. It's land. So it formed over land. Alright, let's try one more. If we're getting affected by an air mass that formed over the Gulf of Mexico, right? Do we know what the Gulf of Mexico is?
Yes.
Yeah? Alright, Kylie, then what kind of air mass would we have? Maritime, good, because it forms over water. Gulf of Mexico's water. But again, that's only half the equation. Maritime, perfect. Maritime, tropical. Why tropical? It came from the south. It's going to be warmer. Right? Seem pretty easy?
Yeah.
Okay, then what if I said, we're getting affected by a very cold, we have a very cold, dry system going on. It's very cold and dry right now. What kind of air mass would that be if it's cold and dry? Dan?
Polar continental.
Polar continental, or we kind of usually go the other way, but either way I'm going to count it right. Yeah, continental because it's dry, polar because it's cold. Those are the kinds of questions we're going to run into. Okay? So what we're going to do is practice a little bit. Because I know some of you guys will take these notes and never look at them again.
Oh yeah, I think it's here.
This sheet is going to help you organize all of that information into a table. And then some practice. Looking at the front page, you guys can probably already start filling that in. This is going to come very easy for some of you. It's okay if it doesn't. We're just starting again. Alright, so let's look at this first paragraph because that's going to be important. But it's kind of what we just talked about. But I know when I put these introductions on here, you guys don't like to read them most of the time. So now you get to listen to this lovely voice read it to you.
Yay!
Alright. Air masses are huge bodies of air that move across our Earth. These air masses are named for their characteristics. Air masses are named for where they come from. That is important. Okay, if you want to underline that, would be a good idea. Air masses are named for where they come from. And the weather that created them. These air masses can be hundreds of kilometers in distance, which also can be hundreds of miles in distance. You guys remember or see the radar? And you see a big green blob moving towards us like, oh, it's going to rain. Right? Everyone's seen the radar.
Yeah.
You don't want me to do my weatherman impression again, right?
No.
No.
Okay, I won't do it. Anyways, so they can be really, really big air masses. There are several different kinds of air masses. For example, an air mass over Canada is considered a continental polar air mass. I just asked that one. I know. I'm tricky. It's like I've read this before. The air mass comes from over land and comes from a cold area. The air mass is then dry and cold. Make sense?
Yes.
Hey. On the other hand, an air mass from the Gulf of Mexico, what? Is considered a maritime tropical air mass. Maritime means water, so the air mass comes from over water. Tropical weather is warm. As a result, a maritime tropic air mass is moist and warm. So, what you guys are going to do, given the conditions, given the name of it, I want you to write the abbreviation in that first column, and then the weather that comes with it. So, is it dry and cold, or is it dry and warm? Is it wet and cold? That kind of stuff, okay? So, use what we have on the board and start writing those down. I'll give you like 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll kind of go over it together. Make sure you're asking questions if you don't get it. Yeah.
So for the observation, like when you hit the play, like PT, MRC, do you want to put like for both of them?
Yep. So if it's continental polar, you need both. Yeah, the abbreviations will always have 2 letters, guys. Yeah, if you want or you want to try it, if you finish the front and it's easy, breezy, lemon squeezy, is that how it goes?
Yeah.
Then you can flip to the back and try to start doing that. But don't go to the back until you get done with the front. So abbreviate first. Remember, lowercase for continental and for maritime. And ask. If you don't ask questions, then I'm going to assume you know what you're doing. There we go. On the front, not on the back yet. Dry is one part of it. Also tell me the temperature. What's that? Nope. See Arctic? In the blue right there above the calendar? Green, so it's going to be also an A, not a P. We'll get to that. I know. Well, I'm going to explain the back in a bit. Skip that and try the questions. Dry and then temperature. This dry and cold is good.
So it'd be like dry, cold.
Yeah, again, remember the first paragraph we just read through, it said weather is dry and cold for one that comes from Canada. So that's kind of weather I want you guys to put. Dry and cold, wet and warm, stuff like that. And if you get done with the front page, you can try the back. No questions? One sec. So why did you say C? Okay, why did you say A? Is it cold or is it freezing? So do you see where it shows? So continental, cold, yeah, see, good. So if you're cold and it's going to be dry or wet? No, dry, yeah, you came from the word continent. Sure. Yeah. On the front page or the back? We'll get to the back. I'm only answering questions up front right now. Yeah. Not for a little while, but we'll get one.
Like, is it like a full sheet?
Probably a full sheet this time. Probably. Because there's so much. Ashley likes to lie.
Yeah, she does.
Alright, how we doing? Questions?
We're doing good.
Doing fun.
What about the back?
Alright, then.
Gave this
I know.
yesterday. Hey, you showed us the site.
Yeah,
So it's the same.
Yeah. You remember all the answers?
I can read one.
Okay.
Right.
Continental polar should have C, P. Weather associated. Continental means dry. Polar means cold. So dry and cold is what I'd put for that. Okay, that's kind of how this is going to work. Who wants to try the second one? Elizabeth, what'd you get?
For the first one, I put CT,
CT,
and then the second one, I put dry and warm.
dry and warm. Does anyone disagree?
No.
Nuh-uh.
Good, me neither. Nice job. Third one, Dan.
I put CA,
CA,
and I said dry and very cold.
dry and very cold. Anyone disagree? Kylie, what'd you put?
I put freezing. instead
That's
of-
fine.
But is it like the same?
Yeah, freezing and very cold are the same thing. Either way, they're both miserable, right?
Yeah.
Yes, they are, Trevor.
Just admit it.
All right,
I was outside.
Fourth one.
5. It was fun.
Madison.
I put first one MT.
MT. I'm assuming lowercase than capital, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And then I put moist and warm.
Moist and warm. Yeah, if we get maritime tropic, that's the stuff that's going to be humid out, right?
Yeah.
Because there's more water vapor. Kylie, what'd you get for the next one?
I did MT
MP,
and then moist and cold.
moist and cold. Here's where we're going to get some snow. Alright, and then maritime Arctic might be the worst kind. Gabby?
I said MA and then moist and freezing.
Moist and freezing, good. Because that means it's super cold and it's going to snow.
Okay,
Not fun.
It's good to get water.
Alright, let's go to the back side quick. Yes, I showed you this yesterday.
Doesn't mean I remember it.
I knew it.
It's called, you guys in English class, you heard of foreshadowing?
Yeah.
Kind of.
That's what I was doing yesterday, foreshadowing.
Yeah, you.
So now, after yesterday and today, you guys should be able to label all of these arrows. But here's the thing. Since we're talking about air masses, do I care where the arrow is pointing at?
No.
No.
No, what do I care about?
Where it's coming from.
Where it's coming from. Okay, so I care about what's happening right here. What's happening right here, and here, and here. Okay, that's what I care about.
So, which one's that one?
Right? I even told you guys, make sure you underline, we name it where it comes from. Okay? So, with that, we need to know what's going on in all of those places. So the U.S., yeah, everyone loves the U.S., but we've got some neighbors,
Yeah.
right? Oh, who's our neighbor to the north?
Canada.
Canada, right there, right?
Canadian. That's fine.
There's Canada.
Hey.
Hey, guys, stop. Listen. Canada is up here. Who's our neighbor to the south?
Mexico.
Mexico. Mexico kind of starts at California and then Texas. Okay? There's Mexico. Why is it important to know where Canada and Mexico are for this diagram? George?
Because one is like cold and it's like warm.
Yeah, that's part of it. Tyler?
Landmass.
Land.
Oh,
We
yeah.
want to know whether that air mass is coming from the land or from the water. That's going to affect its name or its abbreviation. Okay, so there's two questions you want to ask yourself all the time with these. Is the air mass coming from over land or over water? Right? That'll tell us continental or maritime. Second question, is it coming from the north or from the south? That'll tell us temperature. So is it tropical or polar? Thank you. So I'm going to I'm going to pick one of these arrows and then I'm going to call on one of you randomly to come up and write the letters, the abbreviation for this arrow. Okay, so here, I'm going to let you think about it for a second. It's kind of like recycle ball.
And volunteers contribute.
Volunteers cannot, there cannot be any volunteer tributes, okay? So, if I pick, I don't know, let's go with this arrow. Don't say anything. You can look at your notes. If I go with this arrow, what would be the abbreviation for this air mass? Right? This one right here. Remember, it's named for where it comes from. Just so you know, I'm probably going to call someone with their hand down. All right. Cole, come on up.
Congratulations, you won a brand new car.
All right. So we're talking about this one. So, what do you think the abbreviation for that air mass would be? All you have to write is the abbreviation right now. Yeah, take advantage of that one. All right, that's all you need. All right, does anybody disagree with Cole's CP?
Nope.
Does everyone have CP for that one?
Yes.
All right. Now, let's see who can explain why it's CP. Oh yeah. Why did he put CP? You didn't disagree, so why do you think?
Because it's continent. Continental, so it's over land.
Okay.
It's over because it's coming from the North Asians.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Exactly. Continental because it's coming from over land. Polar because it's coming from the north. Easy stuff, right?
Here.
Want to do one more? You guys good?
We're good, guys. We're good.
Okay. So if we're good,
Yeah.
then if you haven't done so already, try doing questions 2 through 7 right now. One thing I want to point out, because it's thrown a few people off. When it says letter designation, that means abbreviation. Okay, so you're just writing the letters. And when it says source region, that means where is it coming from? Where is that air mass starting? So describe it for me.
Can we pick anyone? Like the.
You can pick anywhere as long as it is an empty air mass. Okay?
Right up there.
Alright, so try these. You can work with your partner that's next to you. Please ask questions if you don't understand. Oh, yes. Okay, so it's coming from the southwest, that's why it's tropical, right? And the U.S. is land, so that's good. You're good to go, but here, for this one, switch those around. Usually want the C first. That's fine. You get all this stuff? Okay, so, which letter does it, which abbreviation used for an air mass that forms over the southwestern U.S.? So where's the southwest? Okay, but it's coming from, okay, so south. So what letter would we use to come from the south? No, just one letter for south. T for tropical, right? So we know it's T, so we're at T. Okay, because we got to ask those same 2 questions all the time. Is it forming over land or water, and is it warm or cold? Okay, so it's a capital T, by the way. Well, then this one's over land, because it's the U.S., right? So you say CT. It's like when we ask when it forms over Canada, that's land. If it forms over the U.S., that means
Wait, so we have
land.
say the label.
Say the label.
Yeah,
That's fine. Yeah. Yep.
What do you mean by
So, if you have an empty air mass, where could it have come from? Okay, south and to M. What is M telling us?
water?
Yeah, it came from the south and it came from over water. That's all I know. Any other questions so far?